So I'm going to be using Yarn, but the instructions that I'll be sharing with you will be have a Yarn version and an NPM version for whichever CLI tool you're using. But I want to go ahead and let me actually first close my million tabs that I've got open. Classic, right? Okay.
Anthony, if they have questions, how do you want to handle those?
Sure. People are totally welcome to at any point unmute and yell at me and start just asking kind of, what's happening if what I'm saying doesn't make any sense. Like, it looks like some people don't know what Yarn and NPM are, which is totally fine. So yeah, feel free to unmute. I will try and watch the chat as well. So I'll try and keep my eyes up for whatever is going on. But yeah, please interrupt me. I actually used to be a classroom teacher. Before this, I used to teach high school band. So I am used, having a quiet classroom is quite strange to me. So please feel free to, at any point in time, ask me any sort of questions. So yeah, Yarn and NPM are what you use to install your project. So let me quickly share a couple links for anyone who might need to install these. So we have this right here. That's not what you want. This is what I want. Boom. So this will be for Yarn, and I'll be posting these in the chat. So this is what I'll be using to install our project for, we're going to be using what's called create-nuxt-app. But if you wanted to instead use NPM, you are totally welcome to use that as well. And this is just kind of a different way to install your project. And I'm going to start off just by doing some slides and kind of talking about, like, what is Nuxt? Why should you care about it? And I'm not yet sharing my screen. I'm about to. I was just getting all of my stuff in order. Okay. Bam. All right, we all good? Everyone sees my slides? All right, so we are going to be talking about building an app from scratch with Nuxt.js. So Nuxt.js is built on Vue.js. And here's some resources. If you go to the Mintbean-Nuxt GitHub, or the Mintbean-Nuxt.Netlify, those aren't going to go anywhere. Those are what we're building. But if you do the -tests one, you can see all of the code that we're going to go through in this project, as well as kind of the instructions of how to set up the project and basically what we'll be walking through. So all those resources are already online, and we'll get into those once I've gone through the slides. So right now you can just kind of hang tight if you've already got your dev environment set up and you're good to go there. This is the team behind Nuxt. I think it's always important to kind of talk about who actually built these tools that we're taking advantage of and gaining a lot of value from. So Alexander Chopin and Sebastian Chopin, they are the kind of two who have been working on this from the very, very beginning. And then they have a huge team beyond just these guys. I have no idea what a head of framework does, by the way, but that sounds like a super sweet job. I would love to have that job. And then you have Debs, who is head of learning. If you ever hear a very enthusiastic Irish lady on a podcast talking about Nuxt, that is who it is. She is very visible in the community and kind of communicating what Nuxt is, how it works. I'm really big fan of her work. So what is Nuxt? Nuxt, if you go to their website, they will say that they are the intuitive Vue framework. Now, I kind of agree with this description. I find Nuxt very intuitive, but this isn't really that kind of descriptive, because like intuitive is a very subjective term. And the more descriptive definition, if you know what these words mean, is it's a meta framework for universal applications. Now, if you don't know what those terms are, this is an even worse definition. But what a meta framework means is that it's built on top of another framework. So in this situation, Nuxt is built on top of Vue. in a similar way to how Next is built on top of React. And we'll be looking at a comparison chart between those in a second. But to define the other term, a universal application is an application that can both run on the client as well as on the server. What that means is on the client refers to a web browser on your desktop or on your phone, and on the server is like an actual just box sitting somewhere in a warehouse that is being accessed anytime you go to a link. And this is beneficial for a couple reasons. The main one a while ago was SEO. This is still a big benefit, but it's not as big of a benefit as it used to be. But to kind of look at the original description back when this first came out, was a minimalistic framework for server rendered view applications. Now, if you go to their GitHub, this is the initial commit back in 2016. And this is a explanation of how it becomes universal, because it becomes universal by having it rendered on the server. So obviously it can be rendered on the client because it's a client-side application framework. That's kind of what it was originally designed for. So what Next and what Nuxt are doing is they are making these things be able to run on the server, so that when you have like a SEO web crawler that goes and accesses your website, it will see the content. It won't just see a big blob of JavaScript. That's really why it's beneficial for SEO. But beyond that, you get a whole ton of stuff from Nuxt in terms of just how you actually develop your application that is super, super useful. So this is my meta framework chart that shows all the different meta frameworks that exist. I'm super into this kind of stuff. And if you look at the bottom layer, you have React, Vue, and Svelte. So React, Vue, and Svelte, each of those are your main JavaScript framework or JavaScript library that is taking care of the whole user interface visual components. What it doesn't take care of those, it doesn't take care of the server. It doesn't take care of how you connect to your database. It doesn't take care of routing even, or how do you build a static site. So we have built all of these other tools on top of React, Vue, and Svelte to make it easier for developers to do the things they want to do faster. So if you want to build a static site, you would use Gatsby or Gridsome or Elder. And so that would be if you just wanted like to create a blog, that would be really content heavy. And then you have the server rendering frameworks like Next or Nuxt or Sapper. Sapper has actually been end of lifed very, very recently. So that's why I have the little rest in peace right there. They're kind of transitioning to this thing called Svelte Kit, but that would require an entirely separate talk to explain all that. And then you have your full stack frameworks at top, which is Blitz, Bison, and Redwood. This is where I've spent the majority of my kind of open source time, is working on Redwood.js. And Blitz and Bison are built on top of Next. So this is why I think we're going to see a Blitz or a Bison or a Redwood very soon. They're going to be essentially taking those and doing what they've done on React, but do it for Vue. So watch this space. This is the explanation of just what your Nuxt application is kind of doing. And the only really important things you have to pay attention to here are the layouts and the pages. That's what we're going to be building out when we build our project. Is there's a layout which is going to wrap all of our pages. So if you think of just like a regular blog, you'd have a home page, you'd have an about page, you may have a page of your whole archive. And when you click each of those pages, the nav bar at the top still stays there as you're going to the different pages. So that's like the layout. Or if you have a footer at the bottom, says how to contact you, how to subscribe to your newsletter, those types of things. That's the layout. The layout wraps your pages. And then each of your pages will just have its own file. So it's really great because it's like super, super simple to work with. And like that's the whole kind of explanation of what the framework is. I was not looking at the chat during that, but were there questions that came in? Cool. Yeah, it looks like we got a few. So I'll go ahead and drop all of these links here. So here is going to be just the instructions for what we're doing. So if anyone, oops, did not mean to send that to you privately, Shirley, sorry. There we go. Okay, and let me drop the slides link as well.
Hey, Anthony, quick question before we move on. Can you just give us like a very brief 20-second definition of what a static site generator is?
Yes, okay, so a static site generator is, so you have your HTML, and that's kind of like the content of what your actual website is. So you think about like if you're reading a blog post, you'll have like headers, you'll have the actual blog post itself, and you can build a tool that, so you don't have to write each of those web pages by yourself. You can create a tool that will basically generate all the HTML for you. And this is really useful if you want to use something like Markdown. So if you've ever read like a GitHub README, or if you've ever used dev.to, those both use Markdown, and Markdown is like a really, really easy, simple way to write HTML in like a lightweight kind of fashion. So static site generators have actually been around for close to 15 years now. Jekyll by Tom Preston Warner was created back in 2008. And that was kind of the static site generator that like launched 1,000 static site generators. And Gatsby is like the modern version of a static site generator. And GridSum is like the Vue version of Gatsby. So this is a much longer than 20-second explanation, but I hope that that answers the question.
I think it does. So let me, very quick follow-up. So in AWS, whenever I want to deploy a site really quickly, I'll usually create a bundle in React, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'll just like copy all those files, I'll put it in an S3 bucket, and all I have to do is click on enable files to be rendered as a website. So is that a static site generator? Is that like AWS's version of a static site generator?
Yes, that is. So what you described there, that is the paradigm that kind of launched static site generators, is because you could so easily throw something on an S3 bucket. As you said, everyone started building their own custom tools because they're like, I just have to build something that's going to spit out HTML, and I can throw that on a server, and then people can hit that server and they can get my website. Now, Netlify and Vercel are what happens when you build 1,000 developer tools on top of that, because we want to be able to build these static sites in a way that lets you do all the things you could do with a non-static site. So the opposite of a static site would be something that's like on a server. So this is why we're talking about server rendering things. This is why like Nuxt is such a great tool, because the static sites only can get you so far. So we're trying to build out all these things that allow us to like create like a full stack Jamstack static site kind of thing. But yeah, no, you're totally on track with that. Throwing up, just a static site on an S3 bucket is like, that was kind of the easiest way to get a website up for a very long time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. This is like, I have a whole podcast about this called the Full Stack Jamstack podcast, if you want to know more about that. Okay, so are there any more questions before I start actually like doing things? Okay, so as I said, you can go to this GitHub link, and this is a very hopefully clear instructions of exactly what I'm about to do and what I'm about to build. These are the Yarn instructions. You're going to use Yarn to create the Nuxt app, and that Nuxt app is going to be called Mintbean-Nuxt, and then it's going to ask you a million setup questions that I'll go through one by one, and then you'll go into that directory, open your editor, and start your development server. So we'll be doing that with Yarn, and if you're using NPM, you'll use this npx create-nuxt-app command, and you'll create this Mintbean thing. You will answer the exact same set of questions, except with NPM instead of yarn. And then you will start your development server with npm run dev. And then all the instructions after that will be agnostic to npm or yarn. So hopefully that all makes sense. So we'll start here, and we will open our terminal. So this is going to just kick off our project. So what this is doing is this is generating like a boilerplate for us. So if anyone has ever used create-react-app, this is a fairly similar process. It's going to give us a little bit more than a create-react-app would, because there is like a create-view app as well. This is a kind of a level of abstraction on top of that. But most of this, we're just going to hit enter. So you have your return command. So if you hit return, it's just going to give us this project name. And it's going to ask whether you want to use JavaScript or TypeScript. I do not know TypeScript very well, so we will be doing JavaScript. And then I am using yarn. So I will pick yarn. If you're using NPM, you will pick NPM. These are all of the different CSS frameworks you can use. So if you're a big CSS person, you probably have heard of Tailwind and a bunch of other of these. We're not going to use any of these, but it's nice if you want to use any of those kind of frameworks. There's a kind of built-in commands just to get you going. Here is where you can add on Axios, which is what you would do to like make a call to an API to fetch data. We're not going to mess with any of this. We're just going to create as simple of a project as possible. We're not going to use any linting tools either. So, and then we're not going to use a testing framework either. We just want to do the very simplest possible thing. And then here, we're going to choose universal. So when I had the slide that said a meta framework for universal applications, that's what it's referring to. And then here we're going to pick static. So this is because we're going to deploy this website to Netlify at the end of this demonstration. So this is going to make it really easy to just throw it up right on Netlify. And then we're not going to use any of these development tools. And then that is my GitHub username. You will put in your GitHub username. And then version control system, we'll be using Git. So that is all the questions, and those are all answered in this GitHub document if I went through that too fast for you. And this will take a little bit of time here to install everything. As with most things, when you're streaming, there's a little bit of delay. So if you were doing this on your computer, just kind of by yourself, it would go much faster. But just to kind of look ahead to what we're going to be doing after we create our project, we're going to just create, we're going to commit that project to Git and create a GitHub repository. I'll walk through that as well once this is done. And then we are going to basically take this boilerplate that it gives us and make some slight edits to it, just so we can kind of show you what the workflow is of using a Nuxt app. All right, cool. So now that we have created the project, you can see that it gives you some instructions over here. So to get started, you're just going to cd, so that stands for change directory, into that directory that we just created. So we're going to cd into Mintbean-nuxt. So now you see here we're inside that directory, and yarn dev is going to start our development server. And so what this is going to do is it's going to basically start up our application and let us open it on localhost. So we're going to go to localhost 3000 once this starts up. So it is currently booting itself up, and it has client and server. Going back to this being a universal application, it runs both on the client and the server. So we're just going to take this link right here, and we're going to go right here. And this is it. So this is the kind of boilerplate that Nuxt gives you out of the box. So we're going to open up this project that we've created. And the main thing that you need to know about a Nuxt application is that it's all about the pages. So the pages is what really runs your whole project. So if we look at this over here on the right and this over here on the left, this is what we're looking at. This is our view component. And the view component has three things. It has this template. So this template is our HTML. So we have a bunch of divs. We got an H1, we got some more divs. We got an A tag with a link. So if you know HTML, everything inside of this template should make a lot of sense. The only weird thing is this logo right here. So this logo is a component, and our logo component is here, and that's this thing. So we are taking this logo component and we're importing it into our index page, and this is like our home page. So if we wanted to create another page, all we have to do is create another page in our pages folder, and we call it app.view, and the code for that is going to be right here. So we're going to save that. And then if we go over here and we go to About, we now see that we have this new About page that we just created. We have the About H1 here, and then we have this page tells you about stuff. So that is that. But actually, what I wanted to do was take all of this, because I want the styling as well. There we go. So as I was saying, we have three pieces here. We have the template, then we have the script, and then we have the styling as well. So by adding in this styling, you also get all the nice CSS there that we got from our index here. So if we look at this, we can just change stuff and it will be reflected over there on the side. So all I had to do was make a change and click save, and then it would change over there. And what we want to do here is we're going to just change those links here. So instead of going to docs, I want to go to my blog. So we're going to change this to dev2/AJC webdev. So now if we save that and if we click blog, it takes it to my blog. And then we also want to change our GitHub here so that we got AJC web dev. So now if I click my GitHub over here, it's going to take me to my GitHub. All right, so we've got some pages. We can make as many pages as we want, put whatever we want in our pages. What we can also do is we can create a layout. And the layout is what is going to wrap all of our pages. So what I want for these layouts is I want to create a link to my About page. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use this Nuxt link right here. And if we just throw that in there, we will see it right here up top. But what I want to do is I want to also be able to come back to the home page when I'm on the About page. So I also want this link to the home page here. So I'm just going to take this whole thing and do that. And now what we're going to have is we're going to have two links here. We can click About, and it will take us to our About page. And we can go home. It takes us back to our home page. And yeah, so that is the website, but it is not a website yet. All this is a thing running on my computer. It's on localhost. What we actually want is we want this to be on the internet so that anyone can see this beautiful web page that we've just created. And the way we're going to do that is we need to create a GitHub repo. I also you can delete all of this stuff. I kind of skipped that step, but just kind of clean your project up a little bit. These are all things that are come out of the project by default, but that you don't need to do what we're doing today. So you can kind of clean up your projects. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it can be a little overwhelming at first. But these are our Git commands. So I'm going to open the terminal here, Command J, and I do not need the debug console. And right here, what we're gonna do is if we check our Git status, we see that we have no commits and we have nothing tracked. And this basically means that as of now, we have not done anything with Git. But what we can do is we can do Git add and then period, which is going to take everything and put it in the staging area. So now if we check Git status, everything is green. So that is good. And what we want to do is we actually want to commit to Git. So we're going to do Git commit. And then we're going to create a very descriptive message so our coworkers don't yell at us. And it's going to say first commit. Now we have our first commit, and we don't yet have an actual GitHub repo online that we can commit this to. Oh yeah, and then the last part here is change it from master to main, which is the thing that, sorry. There we go. So this changes the main branch from master to main because some people find master and the master-slave connotation to be offensive. So this is becoming a best practice to change your master to main. And now we're going to create a GitHub repo over here. So we're just going to make a new repository. And we're going to call it Mintbean-Nuxt. And then this will all be good. And we're going to create a repository. And so what this did is it just created this URL here now that we can take our whole project and put it up there. So actually, let me get back to this. Okay. And what we want to do now is we want to take this command, git remote at origin. What this is going to do is it's going to take that URL that we just created and make it the remote so that we can upload our project to that URL. You are going to want to use whatever your GitHub username is. And if you named it the same thing, then that should be the only thing you'll need to change. So we'll do that. And then that's good. We're then going to do this. This is actually will show us that we did it correctly. So if we see there, it now has origin, Mintbean, Nuxt, and then this is going to push it up to the thing. Oops. Yep. Okay, so now if we go back to that URL we created here, which was here, and we refresh, then that is now our Nuxt project that we just created, which is now at this URL. And there's one more step we need to do to make sure we can deploy this. And what we're going to do is we're going to create this file here called netlify.toml. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it so Netlify can look at our GitHub repo and automatically know what it needs to do to build the website. If you want to, you could just go to Netlify and enter these commands yourself into the Netlify dashboard. But this is going to make it a little simpler and make it so other people could deploy your website and not need to know anything about Netlify, or maybe deploy it to Vercel instead of Netlify. So we're going to create a new file. It's going to say netlify.toml. And then we're going to, take this. So this is creating a build command. The build command is nuxt generate. And what that does is it is taking your site and it's creating a static site. So as we talked about earlier, it's generating a static site. So right now Nuxt will be acting as a static site generator and putting that site into this dist folder, which is then what will live on the internet. So now that we did that, one step, which I usually forget, is you have to actually get this back into your Git. So make sure you git commit and give a super descriptive message such as this. Whoops, gave one too many. And then git push origin. All right, so now if we go back here, that's weird. Okay. So sometimes Git confuses me. And if this is not working, you can just create it right here very quickly and easily and just do that. Okay, so now that we have our netlify.toml on our project, then we can go to netlify.com. So if you don't have a Netlify account, get one. It's amazing. This is like the most incredible tool that has ever been created for web developers. There's actually an idea called the Universal Deployment Machine that Tom Preston Warner, the creator of GitHub, is very big on. And Netlify is the closest thing to the Universal Deployment Machine we have gotten to yet. Vercel is very nice as well, though. I'm also a big fan of Vercel. So what we're doing here is we're connecting our GitHub, and then we're just going to take that exact GitHub repo that we just created, and we're just going to select it. And then what's going to happen here is, see how it's main instead of master, so we change that. And then those build commands that we put in our netlify.toml are right here. So this has everything it needs now to deploy our site by just clicking a single button. It used to be a lot more complicated to get things on the internet before this. So what's happening now is Netlify is taking our project and it's building it. So we can actually see what the server is doing right now. And this is all of the stuff that's kind of happening behind the scenes in terms of like, you have Babel and you have Webpack and you have like all of these tools kind of built around JavaScript, because we write different JavaScript than our browsers actually understand, because many people are still using, not many, but people are still using Internet Explorer, and you need to get your JavaScript to work across a million different, devices and environments. So we have a ridiculously complicated tool chain based around JavaScript now. And that's kind of what's happening here, is that this is why it takes like multiple minutes to deploy your website, because it has to basically parse your entire project, figure out what all the stuff is. Like you see here, we have like, there's like, why are there Maven dependencies in this? That doesn't even make any sense. And once this is done building, it will say site is live. And you can go up here now and go to deploys. And right here, we have a website. Before I click that, though, I want to give it a domain name. So if we go to domain settings, custom domain, I'm going to call this the same thing that my that the repo was called. So just Mintbean Nuxt. So what that is going to do is it's going to give us actually your own. So you can make your own URL. It's always going to have .netlify.app. You have to pay money if you want like a .com, but you can create any URL you want. And if we go here, this is now our beautiful website that we created. We can go to our about page, takes to our about page, go to our home page. That's our home page. We can go to our blog, or we can go to our GitHub. And that is the whole project. So if you followed along, ideally, you would have your own Nuxt website deployed to the internet. Yeah. Questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. That was great.
Cool. Yeah.
One question. So it seems to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, that with Nuxt, you don't really need view router, right?
Correct. So to me, the biggest benefit you get from something like a Nuxt or a Next is the router specifically. And that's why you don't have to worry about how to route to your pages. You're able to just create a single file component inside your pages folder, and then it understands how to route to that page. This is what I love about Redwood as well. Redwood has a router built in. Yeah, I've used React Router. I've never used Vue Router, but I would imagine it's very similar. It's hard, like especially when you start getting to things like performance and code splitting and accessibility, and like there's a lot of stuff that goes into getting routing right. So yeah, having a router built in is to me one of the absolute biggest benefits of a framework like this.
Awesome. So okay, so it takes care of the routing for me. What about Vuex? Does it still work the same way as if I didn't use Nuxt and just did the Vue CLI to build my project?
Yeah, so in terms of your state management, it's up to you whether you want to bring in something like a Vuex or whether you want to manage component state just in Vue, or whether you want to bring in an entirely separate thing, whether you want, I don't know if, I mean, I know in React you also have like MobX instead of Redux, so I'm sure there's other things aside from Vuex in Vue land. So I think for the most part, they're kind of agnostic to the state management layer, but that's something I'm not really like super duper familiar with. So that might not be 100% correct, but that's my impression of what I've seen.
Got it. So if someone came up to you and asked you that, hey Anthony, like I'm about to start a site, it's not like, you know, just a little pet project. Like this needs to be enterprise grade, right? This needs to be robust and just like bulletproof. Would you automatically say, okay, yeah, you definitely need the server side rendering that Nuxt offers? Because I'm trying to understand the use case for something like Nuxt as opposed to just using the Vue CLI, you know, building a standard SPA and having it deployed, right? Like why Nuxt and why not no Nuxt?
Yeah, so the SEO thing is the first thing a lot of people are going to talk about, is that Google supposedly now will execute JavaScript to crawl your website, but from what I've gathered, that you're still penalized for that. So if they can actually hit your site and it's been server rendered and they can get the HTML straight from that just because it parses faster, that leads to higher SEO ranking. Now, SEO, as far as I know, no one actually knows how it works. So I'm always very suspicious of all of these types of explanations. But everyone I know who talks about SEO and considers themselves an expert in SEO, that's kind of what they say. So it's discoverability through a search engine is what you're going to get. Aside from that, you get things like optimizations, basically. Like you're always going to get optimizations because these frameworks are constantly being worked on and have an entire team of people working on. And in terms of like documentation, like tutorials, like actually having material that's going to allow other developers to understand your project, like I think that is like really, you can't discount how important that is. So having a huge ecosystem of really high quality developers using Nuxt and constantly having that like flywheel effect is something that I don't hear many people make that argument. I think that's a huge argument in its favor personally. But aside from that, those are going to be the big things. And then like, what else? Yeah, so I think in general, like they say that it's made for like real world apps. Like if you kind of go to their website, that's a thing you see a lot. So it's definitely, the idea is that it's supposed to be like a pragmatic tool. You know, like these guys who are building these tools, they built them for themselves to make websites faster. So it's partly about having a tool that lets you more intuitively create your website, because that's going to inherently lead to less bugs and less mistakes because there's things that are being taken care of by the framework. So yeah, those would be, I think, the three things that I would kind of say are their main strengths there.
Awesome, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Great questions. Anyone else? Anything to ask and pick Anthony's brain?
Yeah, feel free to ask about other things as well. Like I've said, I've done work in like React, things like Redwood, and more like kind of full stack stuff. So I'm really interested in kind of how people are going to build on things like Nuxt to attach it to like the database, because that's one thing that it's not doing right now and that you're not getting is that there's no data layer, there's no like ORM, there's no way to kind of like do data fetching with like GraphQL. That's kind of like built in. Oh, hey Claire, what's up? And yeah, so that's yeah, there's like, this is an amazing tool that I think already does a lot of amazing things, and people are going to continue to build more stuff to do more amazing things with it. So I think it's a cool ecosystem to like kind of get involved in now. It's deep enough into the project where it's like gotten to be pretty sophisticated and can be used to build real things while still being new enough to where you can actually have impact in the community and like work on cool stuff and be a part of building the thing itself. So yeah, if anyone's looking to get into open source, looking to actually like kind of contribute, I think this is a good framework to be looking at.
Anthony, are there any security benefits to using Nuxt over no Nuxt?
If you're using it to do static site generation, like that whole paradigm is incredibly secure because there is no server. You can't hack a CDN as far as I know. And so if you're doing it like what I just did here, like there's no database to hack. So it's not like a WordPress, and it's not like where you have to constantly have all these updates to your MySQL or whatever, because you're getting SQL injections and stuff like that. So yeah, there's tons and tons of security benefits if you're using it in a static way. And that's not like a Nuxt specific thing, but it's a thing that Nuxt can do, and that you can use it to get benefits that way. So yeah, the whole static paradigm has a lot of security benefits kind of baked in. But if you're going the full stack route, if you are getting connected to a database, like that's when you have to start thinking about that kind of stuff more.
Got it. And Nuxt also has support for Vue 3, right? I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, so that's a huge can of worms right there.
Oh, yeah.
Vue 3 is something that has been developed in tandem with the Vue community. So as I understand it, things like Vue Router and Vuex and stuff like that are kind of just like right behind, in the sense that they have been building for Vue 3 as Vue has been building. So yeah, a lot of the ecosystem is getting to the point now where they are Vue 3 compatible. I don't think they're 100% of the way there yet, because Vue 3 just came out like a month ago. Yeah. Like and they spent 2 years working on it. So yeah, it was a very, very long, involved process. And I would imagine that's still kind of somewhat beta, in the sense that if you're going to use Nuxt with Vue 3, you probably will hit some bugs, but they're getting there, and like they've all kind of been in lockstep in terms of getting to Vue 3. This is actually, I'm going to be giving a talk hopefully in like a month or two about Vue 3 and the composition API and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's really, really fascinating stuff. It's potentially transformative for the entire framework.
Yeah, I'm learning Vue 3 now, so that was a really important point of clarification for me, because if Nuxt isn't Vue 3 ready, I think I'll just wait until...
Yeah, well, you can help make them Vue 3 ready. Yeah, I don't know. That's a question that you would have to ask them, and I can't give a super solid answer on that beyond my general impression of the whole ecosystem and where it's going and where it's been.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm just like trying to incorporate like Bootstrap and material to my project, and all the documentation for Vue 2. There isn't really much out there for Vue 3. So what you said earlier about Vue 3 just coming out, like still being in its nascent phases, makes complete sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I would say if you're building like if you do have to put something in production that like people are going to rely on, I wouldn't be building with Vue 3. But for my own personal projects, I am using Vue 3 because it is the future and it's going to be massive. But they're like right on that precipice of like getting it to where it's really ready to go.
Awesome, cool. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah. Thanks for the questions. Those are great.
Awesome.
And feel free, anyone, to hit me up on the Twitter, AJC Web Dev. I'm totally available. I'm on many social platforms, and always happy to answer questions, help you out with anything you're working on.
You can also find Anthony also on our Discord too. So if you want to connect
Yes.
with him on Twitter or on LinkedIn or even on our Discord, you can find him everywhere.
Cool. Thank you guys. Thank you, Mintbean. Love what you guys do.